That's a really engaging way to start a scene. The contrast between a mechanical struggle and emotional tension is gripping. You've got the visceral feeling of being deep in a physical task, while also hinting at the mental weight of Vera's message. Is this part of a larger story you're writing? Girls' night with Nessa. Don't wait up. Love you. I wiped my hands on the shop rag and stared at the screen. Something felt wrong. Not the message itself. Vera had been doing girls' nights with her best friend Nessa Clark for years. It was the exclamation point after "love you" that made my stomach twist. Vera hadn't used exclamation points in our texts for months, maybe longer. My name is Callum Torrin, and I've been fixing cars for 15 years, ever since I got out of the army and decided I'd had enough of taking orders from people who couldn't change their own oil. I opened Torrin Auto Repair in this fading Midwest town because the rent was cheap and people always need their cars fixed. What I didn't expect was meeting Vera Martinez at the coffee shop next door, falling in love with her sharp wit and ambitious smile, and spending the next 8 years watching that smile grow colder every time she looked at me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to that Tuesday night, standing in my garage with grease under my fingernails and a text message that felt like a lie. See, here's the thing about being married to someone for 8 years. You develop instincts, little warning bells that go off when something doesn't fit the pattern. Vera's girls' nights usually happened on Fridays. She usually told me about them days in advance. She usually complained about having to drive all the way to Nessa's apartment on the other side of town. I pulled up the Find My Phone app on my device. Don't judge me. We'd set it up years ago for practical reasons. Vera was always losing her phone, and I was always helping her find it. The app showed her location as a moving dot on Interstate 94, heading east, away from town, away from Nessa's apartment. The coffee in my stomach turned acidic. I called Nessa. "Hey, Callum!" Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. "What's up?" "Just wondering what time Vera got to your place. She left her medication here, and I thought I might drop it off." Silence, long enough for me to count 3 heartbeats. "Oh, she's not here yet. Traffic, you know. She texted that she'd be late." I looked at my phone. The moving dot had stopped at a rest area 43 miles east of town. 43 miles in the opposite direction from Nessa's apartment. "Right. Traffic. Well, tell her I called." "Sure thing. We're just going to watch movies and eat ice cream. Nothing exciting." Nothing exciting. The phrase echoed in my head as I hung up and stared at the dot on my screen. It hadn't moved in 5 minutes. I'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming home and opening the shop. I learned to trust my instincts over there, learned that the feeling in your gut when something's wrong is usually your brain processing details your conscious mind hasn't caught up with yet. Right now, every instinct I had was screaming. I grabbed my jacket and headed for my truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 that I'd rebuilt from the frame up. The engine purred like a contented cat. At least I could trust something in my life to work the way it was supposed to. The drive to the rest area took 38 minutes. I found Vera's car in the parking lot, a silver Toyota Camry that I'd bought for her 3 years ago when she got promoted to HR manager at Hendricks Manufacturing. The car was empty. I peered through the windows, looking for clues, feeling like a private investigator in some noir novel. Her purse was gone. Her phone was gone. But there was something else. A coffee cup in the passenger seat, from a place called Riverside Diner. I'd never heard of it. I walked into the rest area building, past the vending machines and the tourist brochures for attractions I'd never visit. The clerk behind the counter was maybe 19, with bored eyes and a name tag that read Tyler. "Excuse me, did you see a woman come through here? About 5'6", dark hair, probably with a guy?" Tyler looked up from his magazine. "Yeah, maybe an hour ago. She was with some dude in a BMW. Looked like they were in a hurry." A BMW. I knew exactly one person who drove a BMW, and it wasn't anyone Vera should have been meeting at a highway rest stop. Damon Heslor, Vera's co-worker from her previous job at Morrison Industries. The guy she'd mentioned maybe a dozen times over the past year, always in passing, always with a casual tone that now seemed anything but casual. I drove home, with my hands gripping the steering wheel tight enough to leave marks. The house felt different when I walked in. Too quiet, too empty, like it was holding its breath. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. The Find My Phone app showed Vera's location as a moving dot again, traveling north on Highway 27. I watched it for 20 minutes, tracking her progress through small towns I'd never visited. The dot moved steadily, purposefully, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. At 11:43 p.m., the dot stopped moving. At 11:47 p.m., it still hadn't moved. At 11:52 p.m., I called Vera's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Her voice, bright and professional. "Hi, you've reached Vera Torrin. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible." I didn't leave a message. I sat in the kitchen until 1:15 a.m., watching that motionless dot on my screen and thinking about all the small lies that suddenly made sense. The late nights at the office, the new clothes she'd bought but never wore around me, the way she'd started putting her phone face down on the table during dinner. The call came at 1:23 a.m. "Is this Callum Torrin?" "Yes. This is Mercy General Hospital. Your wife has been in an accident. You need to come right away." The drive to Mercy General took 45 minutes through empty streets and yellow traffic lights. I'd made this drive once before, 3 years ago when Vera's mother had a heart attack. That time I'd been frantic, desperate, terrified of losing someone I loved. This time I felt something else entirely, something cold and calculating that I didn't like but couldn't shake. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. I found the information desk and gave them my name. The nurse, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, checked her computer and frowned. "Mr. Torrin, your wife is in surgery. The doctor will speak with you as soon as possible." "What happened?" "Single vehicle accident on Highway 27. Wet conditions, excessive speed. The car left the road and hit a tree." "Was anyone else hurt?" She checked her computer again. "There was a male passenger. He's also in surgery." Male passenger. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. "What's his name?" "I'm sorry, I can't release that information unless you're family." "I'm her husband." "Yes, but you're not his family. Hospital policy." I wanted to laugh. Hospital policy was protecting the privacy of the man who'd been in a car with my wife at midnight, 40 miles from where she was supposed to be. The man who'd probably been holding her hand when they crashed, probably been kissing her while she drove too fast on wet roads. Instead, I nodded and took a seat in the waiting area. The chairs were uncomfortable plastic things designed to make you feel as miserable as possible. I sat there for 3 hours, drinking terrible coffee from a machine and watching CNN repeat the same stories over and over. At 4:30 a.m., a doctor in surgical scrubs approached me. Dr. Patricia Williams, according to her name tag. She looked exhausted. "Mr. Torrin, your wife is stable. She has a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. We've managed to stabilize her breathing, but she's in a medically induced coma while the swelling in her brain goes down." "How long?" "Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks. We'll know more in the next 48 hours. "And the other passenger?" Dr. Williams hesitated. "He's also stable. Broken leg, internal bleeding, but he should recover fully." "Can you tell me his name now?" Another hesitation. "Damon Heslor." There it was, confirmation of what I'd already known, delivered in the sterile environment of a hospital corridor at 4:30 in the morning. My wife had been in a car accident with another man. Not just any man. Damon Heslor, the smooth-talking account manager she'd worked with at Morrison Industries before taking her current job. "Can I see her?" "She's unconscious, Mr. Torrin. She won't know you're there." "I'd like to see her anyway." Dr. Williams led me through a maze of corridors to the ICU. Vera lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed and monitored every aspect of her broken body. Her face was swollen, her left arm in a cast, tubes running into her nose and mouth. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, looking at my wife and feeling absolutely nothing. No love, no fear, no sadness. Just a cold, analytical assessment of the situation. She'd lied to me, betrayed me, and nearly gotten herself eliminated in the process. "The police will want to speak with you," Dr. Williams said softly. "About the accident." "Of course they will." I left the hospital as the sun was coming up, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed obscene given the circumstances. The parking lot was nearly empty except for my truck and a few cars belonging to hospital staff. I sat in the cab for a long time, thinking about what came next. Vera was unconscious, possibly for days or weeks. Damon was also hospitalized, probably scared and confused about what to tell his own wife about why he'd been in a car with my wife at midnight. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I had the advantage. I drove home through the empty streets of a town that suddenly felt full of possibilities. The house felt different when I walked through the front door, not just empty, transformed, like I was seeing it for the first time, noticing details that had been invisible when I thought I was living in a happy marriage. The stack of mail on the kitchen counter that Vera always sorted before I could see it. The way she'd started taking her laptop to bed, claiming she needed to catch up on work emails. The credit card statements she'd switched to paperless billing 6 months ago, saying it was better for the environment. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, pulling up our bank statements. Joint checking, joint savings, the money market account we'd opened when we bought the house. Everything looked normal at first glance, regular deposits from both our jobs, mortgage payments, utilities, groceries. But when I looked closer, I started seeing patterns that made my chest tight with anger. Small cash withdrawals, never more than $200 at a time. Always from ATMs I didn't recognize, in parts of town where neither of us worked or shopped. The withdrawals had started 8 months ago and happened every week or two, usually on Fridays. Then there were the transfers. Money moving from our savings account to checking, then disappearing in electronic payments to something called crypto exchange solutions. 1,500 here, 2,000 there, never enough to trigger any alerts or automatic notifications. I added it up. Over the past 8 months, nearly $23,000 had vanished from our accounts in small, carefully planned increments. My phone rang. Maren, my younger sister, calling from her apartment across town. "Callum? I just heard about the accident. Is Vera okay?" "She's alive. Unconscious, but alive." "Thank goodness. I was so worried when I got your message." I hadn't left her a message. "What message?" Silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. "Maren, what message?" Callum, I need to tell you something. Can I come over?" "You can tell me right now." Another silence, longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and shaky. "I knew about Damon." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My own sister, my own family. "How long?" 8 months. Maybe 9. Vera made me promise not to tell you. She said you'd been having problems, that you were controlling and jealous, and she was afraid of how you'd react. Controlling and jealous. I almost laughed. I'd given Vera complete freedom to live her life however she wanted. I'd supported her career, encouraged her friendships, never questioned where she went or who she saw. The only thing I'd ever controlled was my own temper when she came home late with weak excuses and the smell of cologne that wasn't mine. "She said she was planning to leave you," Maren continued. "That she just needed time to get her finances in order and find a place to live. She made it sound like she was escaping an abusive marriage, Callum. I believed her. And you helped her." Yes. I helped her open a bank account. I co-signed the lease on an apartment. I thought I was helping my sister-in-law escape from my brother who was hurting her." Sister-in-law. Not friend, not family by choice, but sister-in-law. The distinction felt important somehow. Where's the apartment? Downtown. The Riverside Complex on 5th Street. Riverside. Like the diner cup I'd seen in Vera's car. I'm sorry, Callum. I'm so sorry. If I'd known she was lying. I hung up without saying goodbye. The Riverside apartment complex was a modern glass and steel building in the gentrified part of downtown, the kind of place that charged 3 times what my mortgage cost for half the space. I sat in my truck across the street, looking up at the windows and wondering which one belonged to my wife and her lover. The building directory in the lobby listed V. Martinez, Unit 412. Vera had used her maiden name, the name she'd kept professionally even after we got married. Smart. If I'd ever seen a piece of mail or a bill with that name and address, I might have assumed it was work-related. I didn't have a key, but I had other skills. The Army teaches you things that civilian life doesn't always require, but sometimes finds useful. Lockpicking, for instance, situational awareness, how to move quietly through unfamiliar territory. Unit 412 was on the 4th floor, at the end of a carpeted hallway that smelled like new paint and other people's secrets. The lock was a standard deadbolt, nothing fancy. It took me maybe 3 minutes to get inside. The apartment was small but expensive looking. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. Furniture I'd never seen before. A leather couch, a glass dining table, artwork on the walls that actually looked like art instead of the mass-produced prints we had at home. But it was the personal touches that made me want to put my fist through the wall. Photographs of Vera and Damon on the kitchen counter. Not just casual snapshots, but professional portraits, the kind couples get taken when they're planning a future together. Vera looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in years, her smile genuine and bright, her eyes focused on Damon like he was the most important person in the world. There were clothes in the bedroom closet, Vera's clothes, but ones I'd never seen her wear. Dresses that were more stylish and expensive than anything in our closet at home. Lingerie that definitely hadn't been purchased for my benefit. And on the nightstand, a framed photo of Vera and Damon on what looked like a weekend getaway. Mountains in the background, both of them wearing hiking gear and laughing at something outside the frame. The timestamp on the photo was from 3 months ago, the same weekend Vera had told me she was visiting her mother in Chicago. I sat on the bed, their bed, and tried to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete alternate life, carefully constructed and maintained while I was at home, thinking we were working through a rough patch in our marriage. The laptop on the dresser was password protected, but the notepad next to it had what looked like login information written in Vera's handwriting. DH 2019, with a little heart drawn next to it. Damon Heslor, 2019, presumably the year they'd started this whole thing. The laptop opened to reveal a digital life I'd never suspected, email accounts I'd never heard of, social media profiles where Vera was listed as single, a cryptocurrency wallet with a balance that made me dizzy. $94,000, nearly $100,000 in Bitcoin, purchased over the past 8 months with money stolen from our joint accounts. Money I'd earned fixing cars and saved for our future, converted into digital currency and hidden in an account I'd never known existed. But the real revelation was in Vera's email. Hundreds of messages between her and Damon, going back almost a year. I read them all, sitting in their secret apartment while my wife lay unconscious in a hospital bed. The early messages were flirtatious but cautious. Compliments about work presentations, suggestions to grab coffee, the kind of thing that could be explained away as professional networking if anyone ever saw them. But they escalated quickly. Within a month, they were making plans to meet for lunch. Within 2 months, they were talking about how unhappy they were in their marriages. Within 3 months, they were saying they loved each other and making plans for a future together. What made it worse, so much worse, was reading Vera's analysis of me, her husband, the man she'd promised to love and honor and cherish. "Callum is so predictable," she'd written to Damon. "He never questions anything. I could probably tell him I was joining the circus, and he'd just ask what time I'd be home for dinner. He's getting suspicious about the money," she'd written a few weeks later. "But I'm handling it. I told him we needed to be more careful about spending, and he actually apologized for buying too many tools for the shop. It's almost too easy." "Keep him doubting himself," she'd advised Damon when he'd worried about his own wife's suspicions. "Confused men don't investigate. They just assume they're wrong about everything." I read that line 3 times, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. Confused men don't investigate. She'd been deliberately gaslighting me, making me question my own perceptions and instincts, while she systematically dismantled our life together. The most recent emails were about their escape plan. Vera was going to file for divorce, claiming I'd become controlling and possibly abusive. She'd already consulted with a lawyer about how to maximize her settlement and minimize mine. The cryptocurrency would be hidden until after the divorce was final. Then they'd use it to start their new life together. "He'll never see it coming," she'd written just 2 weeks ago. "Callum thinks I'm this helpless little wife who can't balance a checkbook. He has no idea what I'm capable of." I closed the laptop and looked around the apartment one more time. At the life they'd built with my money, my trust, my willingness to believe the woman I'd married when she told me she was working late or visiting friends or needed space to figure things out. Then I started taking pictures. Every photograph, every piece of furniture, every detail that proved this place existed. I photographed the lease agreement I found in the kitchen drawer, co-signed by my sister who'd believed she was helping an abused woman escape. I photographed the credit card statements showing purchases I'd never authorized, the bank documents showing transfers I'd never approved. And I photographed the emails. Every single one, scrolling through months of betrayal and documenting it all with the methodical precision I'd learned in the military. When I was finished, I had over 200 photos and a plan that was already forming in the back of my mind. Vera thought I was predictable, that I'd never see it coming, that confused men don't investigate. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. I left the apartment exactly as I'd found it, locking the door behind me and walking back to my truck with my phone full of evidence and my head full of possibilities. Vera was unconscious, probably for days. Damon was hospitalized and scared. Their support systems didn't know the truth yet, but they would soon. I drove home through the afternoon traffic, already planning my next move. The first thing I needed to do was secure our real assets, the ones Vera hadn't managed to steal yet. Then I needed to have some conversations with people who thought they knew the whole story, starting with Nessa Clark, who'd lied to me on the phone and probably knew a lot more about Vera's secret life than she'd admitted. The game was just beginning, and for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually win. Nessa Clark lived in a converted warehouse on the south side of town, the kind of trendy loft space that looked industrial and artistic, but cost more than most people's mortgages. I'd been there exactly once before, for a housewarming party 3 years ago, where I'd spent most of the evening standing in a corner while Vera networked with people I didn't know and didn't particularly want to know. I rang the buzzer at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, less than 24 hours after finding Vera's secret apartment. Nessa's voice crackled through the intercom, wary and suspicious. "Who is it?" "Callum. We need to talk." A long pause. "Callum, I'm so sorry about Vera. How is she?" "Still unconscious. Are you going to let me up, or do we have this conversation through the intercom?" The door buzzed open. Nessa met me at the elevator on the 4th floor, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that probably cost more than I made in a week. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her hair and avoiding eye contact. "I was just about to head to the hospital," she said. "To see Vera." "No, you weren't." "Excuse me?" "You weren't going to see Vera." You were probably going to sit here and figure out how to handle the fact that your best friend's secret life just exploded in the most public way possible. Nessa's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos I'd taken at the apartment. Vera and Damon on their hiking trip, arms around each other, looking like the perfect happy couple. This was taken 3 months ago. The same weekend Vera told me she was visiting her mother in Chicago. The same weekend you posted on social media about your girls' weekend at that spa resort upstate. Nessa stared at the photo like it might disappear if she looked hard enough. Callum, how long have you known? She sank onto her expensive couch and put her head in her hands. Since the beginning, almost a year. And you helped her lie to me. She said you were having problems, that the marriage was over but you wouldn't accept it. She made it sound like you were being possessive and controlling, like she was afraid to leave you directly. There it was again. The same story Vera had told my sister, probably told everyone in her life. Poor Vera, trapped in a marriage with a controlling husband who wouldn't let her go. It was brilliant, really. It made her the victim and me the villain, which meant everyone who cared about her would help her keep her secrets. So, you provided alibis? Sometimes. When she needed to meet Damon, or when they went away for weekends. I thought I was helping her figure out how to end an unhappy marriage safely. Did you know about the money? Nessa looked up, confused. What money? I showed her the screenshots of the cryptocurrency transfers, the bank statements showing money disappearing from our joint accounts. $94,000, Nessa, stolen from our savings and converted to Bitcoin so I couldn't track it. Her face went white. I didn't know about that. I swear, Callum, I thought it was just an affair. People fall out of love. It happens. People fall out of love, I repeated. But they don't usually steal $100,000 and build an entire secret life while lying to everyone who trusts them. I sat down across from her, close enough to see the guilt and fear in her eyes. Here's what's going to happen, Nessa. You're going to tell me everything you know about Vera and Damon's relationship. Every lie you helped cover up. Every weekend you provided an alibi for. Every conversation where she told you how stupid and clueless I was. Callum, I can't. Yes, you can. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly what kind of friend you really are. Your coworkers, your family, everyone who follows you on social media. I'm going to tell them how you helped a married woman steal money from her husband and gaslight him into thinking he was crazy for being suspicious. Nessa stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. The quiet, predictable husband who fixed cars and stayed in the background while his wife charmed everyone at parties. The man who was too boring and simple to notice when his whole life was being systematically dismantled. She really did make you sound controlling, Nessa said quietly. And now you know why. Guilty people always accuse their victims of the crimes they're committing themselves. Vera was controlling my entire reality, so she told everyone I was controlling hers. For the next hour, Nessa told me everything. How Vera and Damon had met at a professional conference 18 months ago. How they'd started as friends, then became something more. How Vera had confided in Nessa about her unhappiness in our marriage, but also about her fear of leaving me directly. She said you'd gotten angry when she talked about going back to school, Nessa said, that you'd accused her of thinking she was too good for you. I remembered that conversation differently. Vera had mentioned wanting to get an MBA, and I'd encouraged her to apply. I'd offered to take on extra work to help pay for it, told her I was proud of her ambition. But she'd dropped the subject after a few weeks, saying she'd decided it wasn't the right time. Now I understood why. She hadn't wanted more education or career advancement. She'd wanted out of our marriage, and my support for her goals didn't fit the narrative she was building about me being threatened by her success. What about the apartment? She said it was temporary, just until she could figure out how to leave you safely. She made it sound like she was afraid you might become violent if she asked for a divorce directly. Violent. The word hit me like a slap. I'd never raised a hand to Vera, never even raised my voice in anger. The closest I'd come to violence in our entire relationship was slamming a cabinet door too hard when I was frustrated about something completely unrelated. But it was a smart lie. It explained why she needed secrecy, why she needed help, why everyone who cared about her should keep her secrets and help her deceive me. It turned her betrayal into self-defense and made me the threat she was protecting herself from. Did you ever meet Damon? A few times. He seemed nice, really in love with her. He felt guilty about the affair, but Vera convinced him that your marriage was already over, that she was just waiting for the right time to make it official. And his wife? He was going to leave her too. They were planning to file for divorce at the same time, start fresh together. Vera said they'd found a place in Colorado where they could open a consulting business together. A consulting business, funded with my money, built on the foundation of my destroyed marriage. They'd planned it all out, every detail of their future together, while I was at home wondering why my wife seemed so distant and distracted. I need to see the messages, I said. What messages? Don't play stupid, Nessa. You and Vera have been texting about this for months. I need to see what she really said about me, about the marriage, about their plans. Nessa hesitated, then pulled out her phone. I don't feel right about this. You didn't feel right about lying to me for a year, but you did it anyway. Show me the messages. She scrolled through her text history with Vera, and I read over her shoulder. Months of conversations about Damon, about their relationship, about me. And the picture that emerged was even worse than I'd expected. Vera hadn't just painted me as controlling and potentially violent. She'd made me sound pathetic, clingy, insecure, unable to function without her. She'd told Nessa that I'd begged her not to leave me, that I'd cried and promised to change, that I'd threatened to hurt myself if she filed for divorce. None of it was true. We'd never had a conversation about divorce. I'd never begged her for anything, never threatened anyone, never given her any reason to fear me. But her lies were so detailed and consistent that even I started to doubt my own memory as I read them. Jesus, Vera, I said quietly. What did I ever do to make you hate me this much? Nessa looked up from her phone. She didn't hate you, Callum. She fell in love with someone else. It happens. No, this is hate. You don't systematically destroy someone's reputation and steal their money and gaslight them for months unless you hate them. Love fading is one thing. This is something else entirely. I took photos of the most damning text messages, the ones where Vera had described in detail how she was manipulating me, how easy it was to make me doubt myself, how stupid I was for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. What are you going to do? Nessa asked. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Callum, she's in the hospital. She almost passed away. Maybe we should wait. Wait for what? For her to wake up and spin this whole thing as my fault? For her to claim I was abusing her, and that's why she had to run away with another man? For her to take half of everything I own, plus the 100,000 she already stole? I stood up and headed for the door. You have a choice, Nessa. You can keep lying for her, keep pretending she's the victim in this situation, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Or you can start telling the truth about what she's been doing to me for the past year. And if I tell the truth? Then maybe people will understand that the real victim here isn't the woman who stole $100,000 and built a secret life with another man. Maybe they'll understand that sometimes the person asking for help isn't the person who actually needs it. I left Nessa sitting on her expensive couch with her phone full of evidence and her conscience full of guilt. She'd have to decide whether her loyalty to Vera was worth destroying her own reputation when the truth came out. And it was going to come out. I was going to make sure of it. My next stop was Vera's mother, Patricia Martinez, who lived in a tidy ranch house on the other side of town. Patricia had never particularly liked me. I wasn't successful enough, ambitious enough, good enough for her daughter. but she'd always been polite. Distant, but polite. I rang the doorbell at 8 p.m., knowing she'd be home watching her evening television programs. "Callum!" She opened the door with a surprised smile. "I heard about the accident. How is Vera?" "She's stable. Can I come in? There's something you need to know." Patricia led me to her living room, muting the television and settling into her favorite chair. "The doctors think she'll recover completely?" "Physically, yes, but there are other complications." I showed her the photos from the apartment, the evidence of Vera's relationship with Damon, the financial records showing the stolen money. I watched her face change as she processed what she was seeing, watched the denial give way to understanding, then to anger. "This can't be right," she said finally. "Vera wouldn't do this." "She did do this, for almost a year." Patricia stared at the photos of her daughter with another man, in an apartment furnished with stolen money, living a life built on lies and betrayal. "But she said you two were having problems, that you'd become distant and cold." "I became distant because she was pulling away from me. I became cold because she was lying to me every day, and I could feel it, even if I couldn't prove it. She made me think I was going crazy, Patricia. She made me doubt my own perceptions and instincts while she was stealing from me and planning to leave me for another man." Vera's mother sat in silence for a long time, looking at the evidence I'd spread across her coffee table. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to stop enabling her. When she wakes up, she's going to try to spin this as my fault. She's going to claim I was abusive or controlling or threatening. She's going to ask for your help and support, while she tries to destroy what's left of my reputation. I need you to remember what you've seen here tonight." Patricia nodded slowly. "I raised her better than this." "Yes, you did. But somewhere along the way, she decided that what she wanted was more important than who she hurt getting it. That's not your fault, Patricia. But it's not mine either." I left her house feeling something I hadn't expected: pity. Not for Vera, but for her mother, who was going to have to reconcile the daughter she'd raised with the woman who'd stolen $100,000 and built a secret life with another man. By Thursday morning, word was spreading through Vera's social circle. Nessa had apparently decided that telling the truth was better than going down with Vera's sinking ship. Patricia had called Vera's sister in California, who'd called their cousins, who'd called their friends. The story was getting out, and it wasn't the story Vera had planned to tell. My phone started ringing around 10 a.m. Vera's co-workers, her friends, people who'd believed her lies about our marriage and wanted to know if the rumors were true. I answered every call, calmly explaining what I'd discovered, offering to show them the evidence if they wanted to see it. Most of them didn't want to see it. They just wanted to know if it was real, if the woman they'd thought they knew had really been living a double life for almost a year. By Thursday afternoon, Vera's support system had collapsed. The friends who'd been ready to help her through her difficult divorce from her controlling husband were now avoiding her calls and removing her from their social media feeds. Her co-workers were whispering in the break room about the woman who'd been stealing from her husband while pretending to be a victim of abuse. And Damon's wife had found out. Someone, I never learned who, had called her and told her about the apartment, the photos, the year-long affair that had led to a midnight car crash on a highway 40 miles from where her husband was supposed to be. By Friday, Damon was facing his own reckoning. His wife had filed for divorce and frozen their joint accounts. His employer was asking questions about his relationship with a former employee and whether company resources had been used for personal business. His reputation in the professional community was in ruins. Vera was still unconscious, still unaware that the life she'd built on lies was crumbling around her. But she'd wake up soon, and when she did, she'd find that the world she'd expected to return to no longer existed. The people who'd believed her lies now knew the truth. The money she'd stolen was frozen in accounts she couldn't access. The man she'd planned to build a future with was facing his own legal and financial problems. And her husband, the predictable, boring man she'd thought she could manipulate and deceive indefinitely, was waiting for her with divorce papers and a smile. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on Saturday morning. Dr. Williams's voice was professional but tired. "Mr. Torrin, your wife is awake. She's asking for you." I'd been expecting this call for 3 days, planning for it, preparing what I'd say and how I'd say it. But hearing those words still sent a jolt through my system. "I'll be right there." "Mr. Torrin?" She's confused and disoriented. The head injury has affected her short-term memory. She may not remember the accident or the events leading up to it. Convenient, I thought, but I didn't say it. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made me look respectable and concerned, the grieving husband arriving to comfort his injured wife. I stopped at a florist on the way to the hospital and bought 24 roses, red ones, the kind Vera had always said were too cliché, too obvious, too much like something a man would buy when he didn't really know what his wife wanted. Perfect. The ICU was quieter in the morning, just the steady beeping of machines and the soft voices of nurses checking on their patients. Vera's room was at the end of the hall, and I could see her through the glass partition as I approached. She was sitting up in bed, looking small and fragile in her hospital gown, her hair matted and her face still swollen from the impact. She saw me coming and smiled. A real smile, the kind she hadn't given me in months. "Callum, thank goodness you're here." I entered the room carrying the roses and wearing my most concerned expression. "How are you feeling?" "Confused? Scared? The doctors said I was in an accident, but I can't remember anything after leaving work on Tuesday. They said someone was with me?" She was fishing, trying to figure out how much I knew without revealing how much she remembered. But her eyes were clear and focused, not the glazed look of someone with serious memory problems. "Damon Heslor was in the car with you. He's down the hall, recovering from surgery." I watched her face carefully as I said his name. A flicker of something, fear, maybe, or calculation, passed through her eyes before she arranged her features into an expression of confusion. "Damon? Why would Damon be with me?" "That's what I was hoping you could tell me." I set the roses on her bedside table and pulled a chair close to her bed, close enough to see every micro-expression, every tell that would reveal whether she was really as confused as she claimed to be. "I don't understand," she said. "The last thing I remember is staying late at the office to finish the Henderson report. I must have offered Damon a ride home or something." "At midnight? On a highway 40 miles from his house?" Vera's eyes widened, and for a moment I almost believed the innocent act. "Midnight? Callum, what happened to us?" "You tell me, Vera. You sent me a text saying you were having girls' night with Nessa. But Nessa was at home, and you were driving down Highway 27 with another man at nearly midnight. Your car hit a tree at excessive speed in wet conditions." I pulled out my phone and showed her the text she'd sent. "Girls' night with Nessa. Don't wait up. Love you." She stared at the message like she'd never seen it before. "I didn't send this. It came from your phone. Then someone else sent it. Callum, I swear to you, I don't remember sending this message or being with Damon or any of it." She was good. If I hadn't spent the past 4 days uncovering her secret life, I might have believed her. The confusion seemed genuine, the fear in her voice real. But I'd seen the photos of her laughing with Damon, read the emails where she'd planned their future together, traced the money she'd stolen from our accounts. "Maybe this will help your memory." I pulled out my phone again and showed her the photo from their hiking trip, Vera and Damon with their arms around each other, looking like the perfect happy couple. The color drained from her face. "Where did you get this?" "From the apartment. Unit 412 at the Riverside Complex. The lease is in your maiden name, co-signed by my sister, paid for with money stolen from our joint savings account." Vera stared at the photo, and I could see her mind working, calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how she could spin it. Callum, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things. Like how you explained to Nessa that I was controlling and possibly violent. Or how you explained to my sister that you were afraid to leave me directly. Or how you explained to your mother that our marriage was falling apart because I'd become cold and distant. I showed her screenshots of the text messages, the emails, the financial records, months of evidence spread across her hospital bed like a case file. You've been planning this for almost a year, Vera. The affair, the secret apartment, the stolen money, the escape plan. You've been systematically destroying our marriage while making everyone think I was the problem. She looked at the evidence, then back at me, and I saw the exact moment when she realized the game was over. The confusion disappeared from her eyes, replaced by something harder and more calculating. How long have you known? Since Tuesday night, when I tracked your phone to that rest stop and found out you weren't with Nessa. You tracked my phone? We're on the same family plan, remember? The one you set up for convenience. Turns out it was very convenient. Vera leaned back against her pillows, studying my face. So, what happens now? I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. Legal papers, professionally prepared, officially notarized. Now you sign these. She opened the envelope and scanned the documents inside. Divorce papers, a separation agreement, financial disclosures showing the cryptocurrency transfers, and the secret apartment lease. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Callum, I'm in the hospital. I almost passed in that accident. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. You're conscious, you're coherent, and you're finally out of options. Sign the papers, Vera. She flipped through the documents, and I watched her face change as she realized what she was looking at. I wasn't asking for half of everything. I was taking it all. The house, the business, both cars, the retirement accounts. Callum, this leaves me with nothing. You have the 94,000 in cryptocurrency. Oh wait, no you don't. I froze that account on Wednesday. You can't do that. It's my money. It's our money. Money you stole from our joint accounts without my knowledge or consent. The bank was very interested to learn about the unauthorized transfers. Vera's hands were shaking as she held the papers. This isn't legal. You can't just take everything. Actually, I can. Adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state. So is financial misconduct. When you steal nearly $100,000 from your spouse and use it to fund an affair, you forfeit your right to marital property. I leaned forward, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. But here's the really beautiful part, Vera. Remember all those people you told that I was controlling and abusive? They all know the truth now. Your friends, your family, your co-workers. They've seen the evidence. They know what you really are. What I really am? A liar, a thief, a woman who spent a year gaslighting her husband while stealing his money and planning to destroy his life. Vera's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Vulnerable, hurt, human. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. Yes, you did. You planned every detail. The apartment, the money transfers, the lies you told everyone about our marriage. You didn't just fall into this, Vera. You built it, piece by piece, lie by lie. I was unhappy. So you decided to make me unhappy too. You could have asked for a divorce. You could have been honest about wanting out of our marriage. Instead, you chose to steal from me and lie about me and make me think I was losing my mind. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where my truck sat next to the cars of other people dealing with their own crises. Do you know what the worst part is? I said, without turning around. It's not the money you stole or the lies you told or even the affair itself. It's that you made me doubt myself. You made me think I was the problem, that I was seeing things that weren't there, that I was going crazy, Callum, you gaslight me for months. Every time I asked about your late nights or your phone calls or your sudden interest in cryptocurrency, you made me feel like a paranoid, controlling husband. You made me apologize for being suspicious when I had every right to be suspicious. I turned back to face her. That's not something you do to someone you just fell out of love with. That's something you do to someone you want to destroy. Vera was crying now, tears streaming down her swollen face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Callum. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me, deliberately and systematically, and now you're going to face the consequences. I sat back down and pulled out a pen. Sign the papers, Vera. And if I don't? Then we go to court. I present all the evidence I've gathered, the photos, the financial records, the emails where you detailed your plans to defraud me. I call Nessa and my sister and your mother as witnesses. I make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what you did and how you did it. I leaned forward. Or you can sign these papers, accept responsibility for your actions, and try to rebuild your life with whatever dignity you have left. Vera looked at the papers, then at me, then at the roses I'd brought her. Red roses. Cliché and obvious and too much. You really hate me now, don't you? No, I said and meant it. I don't hate you, Vera. I just don't love you anymore. And I don't trust you. And I don't want to spend another day of my life wondering what you're really thinking or planning or hiding from me. She picked up the pen with shaking hands and signed her name at the bottom of each page. Her signature was shaky but legible, legally binding and final. What happens to Damon? That's between him and his wife, and his employer, and the federal investigators who are very interested in his cryptocurrency transactions. Federal investigators? Large cash transactions converted to cryptocurrency and moved through offshore exchanges tend to attract attention, especially when they're connected to people involved in serious car accidents. Vera's eyes widened. You reported us to the FBI? I reported the financial crimes to the appropriate authorities. What they do with that information is up to them. I collected the signed papers and put them back in the envelope. The divorce will be final in 60 days. You'll need to find somewhere else to live when you're discharged from the hospital. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, Vera, I really did love you. I would have done anything to make our marriage work. All you had to do was be honest with me. And now I'm going to go home and change the locks and start figuring out what my life looks like without you in it. I left her sitting in her hospital bed with divorce papers and red roses, crying for a life she'd destroyed with her own choices. I felt many things walking down that hospital corridor: relief, sadness, anger, even a strange kind of gratitude that the truth was finally out. But I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Vera had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences, just like I was living with mine. The difference was that my choices had been honest ones, made with incomplete information by a man who'd been systematically lied to and manipulated by the person he trusted most. Her choices had been calculated and deliberate, made by a woman who'd decided that what she wanted was more important than who she hurt getting it. I drove home through the morning traffic, thinking about what came next. The house would feel different without her in it, but it would also feel clean, honest, like a place where I could trust my own perceptions again. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to going home.